Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast today. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thanks for this opportunity.
Great. So I want to just start with really the same thing I always start with, which is your backstory. What led you into the coaching that you're doing today? If you could kind of tell us what the backstory is, what you're doing today, and also where you are in the world, of course, is always interesting.
Yeah, so I am from Germany, actually, born and raised in Germany. And I now live in the United States. I moved here when I was 20, and I live in Missouri, in a small town in the middle of nowhere. So
Where in
shout out.
Germany are you from? I have to know.
And near Aachen.
Okay, I don't know where that is, but my son studied in Germany in Hamburg for a year and is fluent in German and lives in Poland right now, but his goal is to get to Berlin and stay and work there forever, I think.
Sweet. Oh, great. So my dad
Yeah.
is Polish, so that's really cool.
Oh, fun. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
that's okay. And Aachen is so like Hamburg is in the north, and then Aachen is like in the very west like corner
Got
of
it.
Germany,
Okay.
so like
Okay.
really close to the Dutch border.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I actually always wanted to be a teacher, like for school, like for public school, and was like on the on track to do that. And I hit my observation hours where I actually like had to go in, preschool basically through high school and like observe. And I'm like, oh my
Yes.
goodness, I'm so glad they made me do this because I don't want to do any
It's
of it.
not for you. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was right around the time I discovered fertility awareness. So like a little bit of like backstory on that is I was put on the pill at age 13 for acne, and basically I asked for it. I'm like, I have acne, this sucks, like, I'm a teenager, and I'm gonna go to the OBGYN and I'm gonna get the pill because like that's the logical thing to do, right?
Sure.
So little did I know how the pill worked. I was told, I don't know if it was by my doctor or by my mom, but like the impression I had growing up was the pill tricks your body into thinking it's pregnant. Like that's
Yeah.
all I knew, that's all I cared about, and I didn't question it. So I spent almost a decade off and on different kinds of hormonal birth control. And when I was 21, I had this like hunch, like I knew the pill was like messing with my body. I knew I wanted children like in the future, like 5 to 10 years in the future. And I wanted to let my body, like regulate, like, because like I said, I still assumed that my body thought it was pregnant. But just like it still had this idea, I need to, have my cycles balance out before I get pregnant. And then also like my acne returned like big time, even on the pill. Okay. So I was like, I'm just going to go off of everything and see like if that fixes it. So then that was right around the time when I was like, I don't know what to do with my life, and found fertility awareness through the internet. Love the internet. And yeah, I read a book. I took a program like by an educator to like learn the method properly because I wanted to avoid pregnancy, at first. And really that's when I decided that that's what I had to do. Like it was like the perfect storm. Like I was going to still be able to teach, but I was going to teach women that wanted to learn something and not like kids that didn't want to learn anything. So yeah, I'm being very stereotypical here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I basically got it. Oh, yeah, and then I took an educator program and became a certified fertility awareness educator.
Yeah, it's funny where life leads us sometimes, right? These seemingly horrible experiences like having acne early on, serves a purpose because it leads you into the life you're in now. So now you coach women in all areas of fertility awareness, so including a natural approach to birth control. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think everyone is really aware of what that even means.
Yeah, so fertility awareness can be used for hormone-free birth control, so avoiding pregnancy, and it's actually very effective at doing it. And it can be used for getting pregnant. And then also, like I have some clients that don't fall into either of these categories, and they just come to me for balancing their hormones. Like they have some cycle issues, they might have PMS or period pain, or they just want to like know, like some biohacking, like some biohacking clients. So they just want to know what's going on. That being said, a woman is only fertile for 5 days in the whole menstrual cycle. Mm-hmm. And when I found out about this, I was so enraged I was told I could get pregnant every single day of my cycle. There aren't any safe days, for unprotected intercourse. And fertility awareness looks at identifying each day as fertile or infertile and making an informed decision based on that. So if there are religious, if you have a religion that, where you don't want to use any barrier methods, then you can, choose to abstain during those fertile days. And if you're comfortable using barrier methods or withdrawal or combining some form of barrier and withdrawal, then you can do that as well. So to identify each day as fertile or infertile, we look at the method that I teach, looks at 3 primary fertility signs, which are cervical mucus, basal body temperature, and cervical position. I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more
please.
on that. Okay, so cervical mucus is produced by the cervix, and it's basically noticeable as you wipe yourself. So the method that I teach is very specific in the way we teach people to wipe, basically before and after you go to the bathroom. And then you observe the tissue. Is there anything on the tissue that you can pick up? So cervical mucus might look something like creamy white hand lotion, or I recently bought a new school glue for my daughter, and so it stretches really long, when you just pour it out. Yeah. So it might look cloudy but really stretchy, or it can look like raw egg whites, really clear, stretchy, and slippery. And a lot of women that I've that I get to talking to, they've seen this stuff before and they just didn't know what was happening, or they thought they had a yeast infection and they were really just in their fertile window. So this is thank you, public education, for not teaching us anything.
Yeah. I feel like I'm learning something right now. I'm finished having kids, but it would have been nice to know this earlier.
Absolutely. And then so your cervical mucus basically is your indication of fertility. So if you see cervical mucus on a certain day, then that day is a fertile day. And again, there are more rules around the method if you're really trying to avoid pregnancy. Not everybody is I want to avoid, I definitely want to avoid right now, or I definitely want a baby right now. So there's a spectrum, that people might just be in the middle. But if you're serious about avoiding pregnancy with fertility awareness, then there are certain rules that you need to follow.
Okay.
The second aspect is the basal body temperature, which you take with a thermometer first thing in the morning before you get out of bed. And the temperature itself varies slightly each day, or sometimes it can vary a lot, which we could look at that as well. But then before ovulation, your basal body temperature is in a range of lower temperatures, and after ovulation your basal body temperature rises and is then in a pattern of higher temperatures. And while that doesn't do anything to predict when you're fertile, it does allow you to confirm ovulation in retrospect, which is important to, ovulation is great for overall health, but then also as you're using the method for birth control, it allows you to confirm ovulation. If ovulation has already happened, then it can't happen again because you only ovulate once in each menstrual cycle.
Okay.
And the third primary fertility sign is the cervical position, which also changes during the cycle, but that is often I present it as an optional sign for women that really want to have more data points on their menstrual cycle chart. But again, it is optional.
Okay. So in addition to the coaching and looking at these 3 areas, do you often recommend supplements or anything like that?
So basically I look at the chart first. So I guess I should have added, we chart these observations down every day on a chart, either a paper chart or an app. There's an app for your phone. I recommend the Read Your Body app. And that really gives us a picture of what's going on hormonally. And based off that, I might make some suggestions. So it's can we tweak something in diet and lifestyle? How is your sleep pattern? How much coffee do you drink? And then the next thing is would a supplement be helpful? There are, I generally do recommend a vitamin D and a magnesium supplement because that's what a lot of people are deficient in. But again, it's not a blanket statement that I'm going to make. And there are other supplements too, if a person is dealing with period pain, I might recommend a protocol for that. But then also fertility awareness is not like the end all be all of everything. So a lot of times I'll suggest, to get a blood panel done, or to get your thyroid checked out, or, specifically test like your vitamin D status, because that can give a lot of indication, as well as like what we can do with food and supplements to balance that out.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I like that you recommend the magnesium and the vitamin D. I just saw my endocrinologist this last week, and she always monitors my vitamin D, and it's always dangerously low when I'm bad about taking my supplements. Right now, this month, I'm on kind of like the power supplement of it, where I have to take like 50,000 IU once a week to build it back up. And it can so easily drop. Even when I'm out walking every day in the sun, it doesn't matter. I'm still not high enough. And the blood panel as well. She runs a full blood panel on me, and you don't know what you're deficient in and how that can affect almost every aspect of your life, and even fertility, of course, too. So
Absolutely.
so I'm really interested in the holistic approach to balancing hormones. And this is a selfish question, and I'm sure, women are going to benefit from this. I know a handful of women, not even a handful, probably a lot of women in my own community that will want to ask this question. So if we're looking at like the perimenopausal years leading into, I'm very close to menopause, what would you suggest to a woman who is at that stage, who is not, who is kind of on the other end of fertility, about balancing hormones?
I love this question. So I guess I'm gonna your audience probably knows this, but so menopause is defined as 1 year having passed since your last period, then you're like officially in menopause, and like the 10-ish or so years before that point in time is your perimenopause. And so I'm a little bit younger than like the perimenopausal years. I'll be turning 29 this year, but the women that I've worked with, what I've learned from them is things that they might get away with in their 20s and 30s, they might not get away with anymore in their 40s and like definitely 50s. So things like, and I say this with a lot of love and compassion as a recovering coffeeholic, they might have gotten away with drinking 5 cups of coffee a day in their 20s, and now they've like maybe reduced even to 1 cup a day, and maybe that's like still too much for their system. And so like I'm not trying to pick on coffee. It might, like leaving out coffee might, do the trick for some, while adding magnesium might do the trick for others. But for many women, it's a combination of looking at a lot of things to like sort out their hormones. So hang on.
Actually, the coffee, though, not to interrupt you, but I actually switched to decaf probably 4 years ago, because I just felt like something was not right in my body. I felt I'm already an anxious person anyway, but that was heightened. And I think it was to try to alleviate some of the anxiety I was feeling. And it really helped. Like, it was almost like this night and day. And now sometimes I think, oh, I can have regular coffee, and I'll have a very small amount of it, but occasionally it just will affect me all day long, and I'm right back to the decaf.
I can so relate to that. I tried quitting coffee multiple times over the course of like 5-6 years. And what has finally done it for me was, so I have 2 kids, they're 4 and 1, she turned 1 today. And I told myself that postpartum with the second one, I was just going to quit coffee, because with my first, I was like on it, off it, and I didn't really make it long enough without coffee to see if there was any difference in like her behavior, her sleep pattern. She was an awful sleeper. I mean, babies wake up during the night. Like, yeah, I know that, but it felt like a struggle.
Yeah.
And so I just told myself I'm going to be tired postpartum anyways. So like the day that I gave birth, I switched to decaf, and I stopped drinking coffee. And then, like you said, try to like get back on it, because I'm like, oh, this is fine, everything's fine, like I can drink coffee 2 days in a row. And what I found is I just couldn't fall asleep.
Yeah.
And having drank coffee for so long, I just never even gave it a thought that the caffeine might be doing something. And then especially in the last few years, I had reduced to just 1 cup in the morning, and it was still affecting my ability to fall asleep at night. So I
Mhm.
would just lay there with the baby trying to take a nap because I knew I was, tired, but I couldn't fall asleep because I had the cot. So when I made that connection, it was very easy to just stick with my decaf.
Sure. And now that you mentioned sleep, I have found that sleep is such a huge part of how I feel and making sure I'm getting a good night's sleep. And I think in the perimenopausal years that can be an issue anyway. Experiencing insomnia, which I've had on and off for many, many years. But I feel like I'm having the best sleep of my life lately. And a lot of that is probably due to giving up coffee.
Wow, I love that. I love to hear that. And honestly, the sleep was going to be the next piece that I wanted to mention as far as like perimenopausal, balancing hormone tips is what time do you go to sleep? Do you go to sleep before midnight or after midnight?
Mm-hmm.
Do you sleep in complete darkness? Is there any light in your room?
Yeah.
And then how much do you stare at screens before you go to bed? And honestly, the biggest factor in this balancing hormones in the perimenopausal years is like the liver. So the liver does a lot.
Yeah.
It, clears your body's own hormones, and then it also has to clear whatever like floats around in the environment, whatever you might like be putting, on your body, things like your household products, like your cleaning products, your personal care and beauty products. And like I'm saying all of this with a lot of compassion as well. I've been on this journey like to improving, like getting rid of toxins and finding cleaner alternatives for all the things for 7 years. And so I don't want somebody to listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, what have I been putting like in and on my body? I need to like toss it. So that's not the message that I want to send, but it is, it is a fact. So the analogy that I always use is what straws can we take off the camel's back? So, your liver does a lot. So what can we do to make it easier on your liver? Like I said, how much, coffee do you drink? How much sleep do you get? Like do you consume regularly consume alcohol? And again, this is not about cutting everything completely and never allowing yourself to have anything. It's about finding that balance. And it's so funny with menstrual cycle charting. I'll encourage my clients to write on their chart when they're having coffee or a glass of wine or something like that. And a lot of times they will see the correlation. When I have wine, I don't sleep, or when I have coffee, I just go berserk.
Yeah.
I can have 1 cup of coffee without having menstrual cramps, but I can't have 2 cups of coffee without, like having menstrual cramps. So it is really this like self-monitoring like experiment that's like continuing.
Yeah. Very interesting. And they all kind of things can affect one another. So I like that you mentioned alcohol too, because I think as we get older, we don't recognize it, we don't realize it. But just like coffee, that's going to affect us differently. The hangover that we had in our 20s is not the hangover we're going to have when we're older. So that has gone way down in my own life too. We have to do these things in order to just feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to ask this question because I think women in general love to hear an entrepreneur's story. So we've heard about your story leading into coaching, but what would say a typical day in the life look like for you as a working mom?
So I don't get a lot of work time. I will preface it with that. My oldest is 4 and she goes to preschool 3 days a week. And then my youngest just turned 1 and I have a babysitter who comes to the house twice a week for 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So those are when I put like my client coaching calls or like, if I do like a Facebook Live or something like that, or like the podcast interviews, just so that I know I have like care for my children. And a lot of work for me honestly still happens at night. I don't love it, but it's reality. For this season of my life, it is the reality. And I did it with my first 2, and then I had about a year between. So like my youngest started preschool at 2, and then I had my second when she was almost 3. So I had like this 1 year of, oh my goodness, I don't have to work at night anymore. I can just like work during the day and enjoy my evenings. So like I picked up knitting again. So now all of these things are being put on the back burner, and I just realize that this is the season of my life. So that's as far as work goes. It's a lot of time spent in the evenings as well, and I try to give myself grace on that too. Like last night, the kids wouldn't go to bed until 9:30, and they're pretty young. So, so we had to deal with that. So yesterday went out the window. But yeah, that's like, I used to see clients at night too, and it just became too stressful. Oh, the baby woke up and she needs to nurse back to sleep. And so that's why I decided to focus on the daytime hours. And then when we're together as a family, we try to go outside. It's finally warming up in Missouri. And so we've gotten to do that as well.
Okay, great. So what would you say has been your greatest challenge, I guess, leading up to the career you have now in coaching?
Are you talking like personal, like life
It
events, or
could
like
be
business, or?
either.
So I think what led me into coaching, like in the first place, were like my own issues, kind of like you know, that I'm gonna ask a selfish question. So my
Yeah.
acne definitely played a huge role. I have a predisposition, or had when I was a child, I developed an autoimmune condition with psoriasis. And the birth control pill, I am convinced, didn't help any in fixing my gut at all. So the birth control pill is known for, affecting the gut negatively as well. And from that, I have a ton of food intolerances that I still am sorting out. So that's been like a struggle with my own cycles. But then as far as business goes, it's honestly the availability of childcare. So for a while, I was like completely, I can't say completely, because my mother-in-law is a godsend, and she was watching the kids, on the weekends, or an hour here or there. So that was awesome. But honestly, just finding the time to like a chunk of time to really get into something, and like really create something, like create a new program, or create like I'm working on a hormone challenge in the next coming months. So things like that really move a lot slower than I would like them to, just because I can't find the time to do a lot of these things.
Okay. Yeah, we all have different challenges leading in. So I think it's good for women to hear about how those can change too, according to the season of life that we are in, because it really does change. But it's also nice, I think, to hear about other people's challenges, because those challenges lead you sometimes into the life you have now, and they can almost present themselves later on as gifts. So I think that's important to share as well. Any books that you would recommend to someone who is a woman who is just struggling with fertility right now, maybe wants to learn more about her own body, etc.?
Absolutely. So the book that I read, actually my gynecologist recommended it to me, which is rare. It is called Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler. And it's a pretty thick book. And I think I was like on my last semester, and I had like taken my finals. So I was still in college, and I devoured the book in like 2 days, read it cover to cover, and I was enraged, like, oh my goodness, like why doesn't everybody talk about this? So that's definitely a good starting point. I also love the Fertility Friday podcast. That's how I basically I took her course when I wanted to gain more confidence in charting my cycles, and that's how I went on to like become an educator. So her podcast is super helpful. And then also I love the Read Your Body charting app, because it is a completely user based app, so it doesn't have any predictions. A lot of apps where you can track your period, it'll predict like it'll try to predict ovulation, which is really not how your cycle works. Yes, you may have a pattern, but which day you're going to ovulate in each given month is not like up to we can't predict that. So that's why we need cervical mucus to tell us, okay, we're approaching our fertile window. So those three I would say are my go-to resources.
Okay. And where can we find you online if somebody wants to maybe schedule a call with you or read more about you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. My website is amyjovitamurray.com. That is AMYJOVITA. Murray is MURRAY. And I have the same handle on Instagram and Facebook at amyjovitamurray.
Great. So I will include that, of course, in the notes of the podcast, and also in the description of the YouTube video when I post that. So thank you so much for joining me today, Amy. It was a pleasure to talk to you and to hear your story.
Thank you so much.